Nhìn gì? Ở đây đâu? Bên kia.
While everyone's still joining, I'll go ahead and say good evening and thank you for joining us. And we're excited to have everyone here. I am Dr. Natalie Delgado, the Director of the Outreach for Louisiana School for the Deaf, and I'll explain a little bit more about our services at the end of the presentation. Before we begin, I want to have everyone please mute your microphone and turn off your videos as well for the remainder of the presentation. You're free to use the chat box if you have any questions or engage with each other. If you have any issues or questions related to technology, please add a message there. And I want to say thank you to Megan for providing this presentation, explaining about her life experiences. After the presentation, we'll have questions and answers. And we would like to welcome Megan and let her start with sharing her screen at this time. Megan, we'll still have some people joining. Maybe give yourself a few more minutes before you begin. Okay. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'll go ahead and start sharing my screen. Hello everyone. Thank you for joining our presentation, Learning to Live with Usher Syndrome. These are the topics that we'll discuss in tonight's presentation. Just wanted to give you a disclaimer. This is based on my experiences. I'm sharing with you all my personal experiences. Just keep that in mind. Other experiences are different than my own. And this presentation, hopefully you'll learn something and keep that in the back of your mind and learn about others' experiences and stories, because there's many stories to learn from. I'll start with my background. I was born to two hearing parents. I was born profoundly deaf with Usher syndrome. I currently teach English language arts at the Louisiana School for the Deaf and upper elementary students, 4th and 5th grades. And I've been there 9 years. I got my bachelor's degree at Louisiana State University with a major in psychology and a minor in sociology. Later, I had gone to the University of Lafayette and took classes for a certification program focusing on mild, moderate education. After that, I attended Lamar University for my master's in deaf ed. I'm currently back at Lamar University or in the doctorate program in deaf studies and deaf education. I'm a first year student in the doctorate program. I'm very excited. You will see the different pictures on the screen. Those are pictures of my eyes. At the bottom, that is what a normal eye is supposed to look like. At the top two pictures are my eyes, the left eye and the right eye. Now you can see the comparison in colors. The top left and the top right. The top left is a little bit darker, and that's the Usher syndrome indicated in the pictures. It's darker spots where my vision has deteriorated. Those rods and cones have deteriorated due to the Usher syndrome. Also, I was born with myopia, nearsightedness. That's typically, a typical eye shape is the shape of a ball. However, with myopia and nearsightedness, my eye shape is more of an oval. So with the retina, it's very thin layer. It's like a wet tissue around the eye. And now with my eye shape, the oval shape, my retina is stretched. And at 14 years of age, I had my retina detachment. My retina detached at 14 years old. And I remember one day I had gone to school and I noticing things in my vision, like floaters. When I would look at the light, I would see purple and green shapes floating around in my vision. I did take Braille class during high school. And at that time, I asked my Braille teacher and explained the shapes and the colors I was seeing. And that was when I learned what floaters were. Still, it was bothering me all day. I had told the teacher, and for whatever reason, I don't really remember, they did not send me to the nurse. When it finally went to the nurse, she asked me if I was hit in the head. I said, no, I hadn't been. And so she sent me back to class. I think they contacted my mother, and right after school, we immediately went to the doctor, the eye doctor. Me, my mom, and a friend that we typically carpooled with. We went to the doctor's office, and I remember the doctor looking at my eye and saying, your retina is attached and you have to have surgery tomorrow. I was only 14, and I started to start my journey with my eyes at that age, in that moment. After that surgery, my left eye is the one I had surgery in. I was legally blind, was considered legally blind until that eye healed. But because of the detachment of the nerves were damaged in the left eye. I was not able to regain that vision back. And you can see in the picture, the left eye, there's holes, and that's scars from my surgery. Now my left eye is deteriorating more than my right eye. My left eye has been deteriorating and is led to a cataract. I had cataract surgery at 18, very young. Went through that process, and my left eye started deteriorating even more. And now with the Usher syndrome, my vision in my eyes are different. Right now, I wear contact in my right eye, nothing in my left eye. After the cataract surgery, I have, would you say, quote unquote, average vision in my right eye. No prescription needed at all. So I wear the contacts in my right eye. And it's odd because when I wear the contacts, I see one vision. And it's still nearsighted, I just see one vision. However, when wearing glasses, I'm able to see two different visions. If you think about it, it's kind of weird because my eyes, have become made an image one. Now, what is Usher syndrome? There's 3 types, type 1, 2, and 3. Usher's is a generatory deterioration of eyes, also a loss of balance. Usher syndromes have visual loss related to the retinitis, which has caused my eyes to deteriorate. Now, the retina has cells within them. They pick up the light and sound from all around and connect to the brain, which becomes electrodes in the brain. And the brain interprets that as vision. There's a rods and cones, and they do that when they see the light. Now, with Usher syndrome, for those rods and cones that I mentioned, they are deteriorating. For hearing loss, because of that gene mutation, like the cochlea. Now there's 3 types, type 1, 2, and 3. The first type is born profoundly deaf from birth in both ears. Night blindness before the age of 10. Typically it appears around 10. And they have balance issues as well. The second type, type 2, born on average of moderate to severe hard of hearing. For the vision, it shows up that the visual deterioration is slower process than type 1. Type 3, they're hearing at birth and progressively lose their hearing. It's very rare. And it wasn't until 1990, the hard of hearing, mild and hard of hearing, will deterioration, as well as the hearing loss. Balance issues are impacted as well. Also, those types of Usher syndrome there's several types. USH1, C, quote unquote, Cajun. I'll explain more about that later.
And now for Founder's Effect. Now, I'm from Louisiana, and there's a large population of deafblind people with Usher syndrome. There's other areas like Seattle who also have a larger population of people with Usher syndrome. Founder's effect is when there is a small community of people and there's marrying that are happening, marriages happen within that small community, and that gene is passed on to other generations. Both parents have to have that mutated gene, one copy in each parent, and then their offspring can be affected with that gene. In smaller communities, that gene becomes more prevalent. That's what Founder's effect is. And that's why there is more people with Usher's 1 from the Acadian population in Louisiana because of Founder's effect within small communities of people who share the same history or geographical area or same culture. So Usher syndrome has various different genes. There's Usher's type 1. There's 6 different genes within Usher's type 1. It can be USH through 1 through A through. I have another friend who has Usher's 1F, and it's a Jewish gene, possibly. Could be an American Indian gene from different geographical areas. And then type 2 also has 3 genes, and type 3 is a rare one. That's Usher's 1 is more common. There's 6 different genes with Usher's 1. Studying the DNA of the Acadian population and those with Usher's syndrome, they've learned a lot. This shows how the autosomal recessive inherited gene works. This is one way that Usher syndrome can be passed on if 2 parents both carry 1 copy of a mutated gene and 1 copy of a regular gene. If they come together, this is how they can pass it on to their offspring. This is the chances of their child either being not affected, being a carrier, or being affected by the gene. In my case, I had a 1 out of 4 chance. Both of my parents were hearing and both of them carried the gene, and therefore they passed it on to me. I had 2 copies of that mutated gene. Carriers can have just 1 copy of the mutated gene, and that's how they can pass on that Usher syndrome gene. You see this picture here of this gray cloud, and you might wonder, why do I call that my companion? Because I know that one day with my Usher syndrome, it is possible that I will become blind one day. So that is constantly, I'm carrying that around in the back of my mind. You might think, well, that's no different than being deaf, but it is, because I've never heard before, so I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Hearing people hear, they don't want to miss that. But to me, being deaf is normal. But for my vision to lose that gradually, it's very scary for me because I don't know what the future holds for me. So yes, that dark cloud is my companion every day. Some days that cloud is large and overwhelming, very looming. Other days it's almost non-existent. It just depends. But it's very unpredictable, what will happen with my eyes. What is invaluable is a support system, independent living skills, and knowing that no matter what happens, it will be all right. Identification. I was officially identified with Usher syndrome around 10 years old. I remember when they tested me for Usher syndrome, I had to do this test that was called the Bowl test, where I had to place my head inside this large semi-dome, what they called the bowl, and it had light all around the bowl. It's kind of like an audiogram. When you hear a noise, you have to click the beeper, or you click the little thing that you're holding in your hand. It was like that. Every time I saw a light, I had to click. Some of the lights were very small, some of the lights were big, some lights were dark, very dim, some were very bright. So I had to sit there. They tested one eye at a time. I had to wear a patch over the other eye and then patch the alternate eye. Each one was 20 minutes for each eye. I was 10 years old, so it was very difficult for me to sit through that test. Of course, technology has changed since then. At that time, I don't really think I understood what Usher syndrome was about. I just remember having a difficult time seeing at night. I was in Girl Scouts, and when we went out to camp at night, I was the girl with the flashlight. I was also very clumsy with balance issues, which comes with Usher syndrome. I didn't start walking until about 16 to 18 months old. I couldn't see well because of my nearsightedness, so I bumped into a lot of things. I had bumps and bruises. I got glasses at the age of 3. They were very thick. I'm still clumsy to this day. My balance with Usher syndrome is very difficult. Balancing on one leg, I can't do. But I'm happy that I found out at a young age that I was identified younger. I know others who were identified with Usher syndrome later when they were 20 or 30 years old, and it's a lot harder to accept at that age. It's better to come to terms from a younger age and to get more support and resources and research. Accommodations, these are all supports for students with Usher syndrome. Accommodations are key. Eye strain is not good. When you provide accommodations, don't assume it's the right accommodation. Ask whether or not they can see it. Ask if you need to accommodate with lighting. For you educators out there, if you're working on accommodating students, you want to accommodate them and not make them accommodate you. I remember one instance when I was little, my teacher said that I was not paying attention in school. And it was even put on my report card, Megan doesn't pay attention. So there was a meeting held, my parents were involved, teachers, interpreter. And we found out at that time that what was happening was I'd look at the interpreter and then I would look elsewhere. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't something I did on purpose. It was because of eye fatigue. I looked away to give my eyes a break, and the teacher thought I was not paying attention. So it's important to give students breaks between lessons, especially with virtual schooling. And now I go to class every other weekend on Zoom. It is 4 hours long. So sitting there on Zoom for 4 hours, what I need for accommodations is someone to do the spotlighting and have more breaks. The spotlighting is needed because if there's more than 6 people on that Zoom screen, it's very hard for me to be able to see everybody at once. I have to literally scan with my eyes to try to figure out who's talking. But the spotlighting feature helps me to see who's talking. We can wait until the person is spotlighted to speak, and then I know exactly who's speaking. Sighted people can sit back and they can take in the entire monitor with no problem, whereas I can't. I can only focus my eye gaze on one individual at a time. So I need clear cues when it's time to look at a different speaker, whereas that's where spotlighting comes into play. Breaks, typically after 45 minutes to an hour, we take a 10-minute break and come back. So breaks are important. Larger fonts. Now with digitalized curriculum, you can have larger fonts, you can have different colors, you can ask students what they prefer. Right now, I have the dark background with the white lighting for my font. In the classroom setting, make sure that they have good lighting in the classroom. If you want to show something on the smartboard, typically teachers will turn off the lights to look at the board. But with students who have Usher syndrome, you have to think about being accessible for them, making sure they can see you or the interpreter or the teacher, that there's a light on the person speaking or the person signing. Perhaps turning off the lights to look at what's on the smartboard, then turning the lights back on for the discussion. Ditto copying. I'm going to show you a picture on the next slide. It's the old machine they used to use. It had purple ink. And that machine was not fully contrasted in color. And then signing space is another accommodation to take into consideration. I always ask people to keep their signing box smaller and up higher. If they're signing down low, I cannot see that. If they're standing too close to me in signing, I cannot see it. You have to back up. So that's my preference for my accommodations, but everybody else's accommodations might be a little different. Again, don't assume you know what someone needs, but if you ask them, there might be other accommodations as well. And I'll highlight some of those on the next slide. Both of these are accommodations for making larger fonts, and that's an old Ditto machine. You know, back in the day, they didn't have a scanner, they didn't have a printer. They had this machine where they cranked out papers. But when I got those papers, I couldn't see it. The address was not. The accommodation was a black and white from the Xerox machine. And then we had note takers. Note taker's notebook. I had that accommodation back in middle school, I believe. So the notebook, the note taker would write notes on the white paper, and it would make a carbon copy onto the yellow paper. And typically they would rip out the yellow paper and give it to the person who needed the notes. But for me, they had to give me the white paper, or they had to make a Xerox copy. The yellow paper was not pencil on a light on it, I could see it well. So I had to ask for them to write in pen, not in pencil, on the white paper where I could see the contrast with the clear font.
Now, interpreters, educators who work with students who have ushers, they need to think about their clothing. Darker, solid clothing helps reduce straining of the eyes. Typically with darker skin tones, contrasting colors, light pastels or solid pastels, because it's straining on the eyes and looking at someone that with a pattern on there. There's a pattern on their shirt, bright colors, I would just look away. We need a solid colored clothing that contrasts with the skin tone. Also, it's very important to have background that's solid, dark, that contrasts with your skin tone, and no distractions whatsoever in the background. Right now, I'm in black. I have a black background. It's able to see very clearly. Oh, I'm sorry, let me go back. Language at IEP meetings. I remember my first IEP meeting. It was going into high school. I was going to be a freshman. I remember it was a small room in the high school library. There were several people sitting around the table. I was included. I wasn't a student at that school yet. I was transitioning there. And I remember that meeting. I was sitting there and they were discussing, the IEP team members were discussing what services they would provide for me. They made a suggestion, maybe I should start learning Braille. And one of the IEP team members knew I loved to read. I read all the time. And I'll never forget, one of the members in the IEP team said, "What if you woke up blind one day?" My mother bawled after hearing that statement. And that was my first high school IEP meeting. That was not the appropriate language to use. I remember that very well. They could have been considered a traumatic experience. I was only 14. I mean, I could remember it clearly. I mean, I considered, what if I woke up blind one day? I mean, I had that kind of experience with no support, no explanation. I did go ahead and learn Braille my 4 years at that high school, and I'm happy I did. I have that skill if I need it later on in life. The IEP meeting, during the discussion of the services and accommodations of the child, try to use positive language. Don't use words such as can't or not. They can't see that. You can't do this. They can't do that. Instead, let's say, use a bigger font, contrasting colors to support the child and have them access the material. IEP meetings are for team members to help the child provide access to the curriculum and materials. So keep that in mind. And that meeting, instead of, telling my mom, what if one day she woke up blind? That person could have said, maybe we can add a Braille class to support your child to access the materials they need. That would be a great skill that they could use later on. That was more of a positive approach. I remember that IEP meeting, just try and remember that, to use positive language in the IEP meetings. Advocacy. That is a huge part from my experience. Now, Usher syndrome is tough condition growing up with. Like I said before, mentioned before, I had my companion, that gray cloud, full of fear, always with me. And some days it's right there and I'm constantly thinking about it. Whereas other days it's not so much on my mind. The environment can make my companion be right in the forefront of my mind. With a child's conditions, be careful you don't want to involve the right professionals, the doctors, therapists, whoever provides services. Some of the doctors do not have good bedside manner, and that can really impact a child and how they accept their identity. I know that from personal experience. I would not say, I'm not saying sugar-coated by any means. I'm not saying that. You know your child's needs and what will happen, but you don't need a quote unquote in your face approach. With my experience with the IEP meeting, what if one day you woke up blind? I needed someone to support me, explain it to me, not just throw it in my face and not understand it. I was just a teenager at that time. I mean, my balance of social and emotional needs were off balance. I didn't know how to process that. Now, growing up, I went to several doctors, and one doctor in particular, his bedside manner was terrible. I would leave his office crying. If I had to go to his office that day, it was going to be a bad day. As I got older, I would face the fact that, okay, I have to go. I'm going to the doctor's office today. But now I do not go to that doctor anymore because I'm old enough to make the decision. But that doctor was not beneficial for me mentally and emotionally. That doctor would look in my eyes and say, "Oh, you have ugly eyes. Wow, your eyes are terrible." And it would perform tests that weren't appropriate for my vision. He would always make comments like, "Oh, you shouldn't drive." Just the negative comments in my face. I didn't have an interpreter at that time. My mom was the interpreter, so to speak. And I would get mad and want to speak up, and my mom would not voice what I was saying and shake her head at me, like, "Don't say that." So it's important to have an interpreter. I didn't have a voice at that time. So parents, be advocates for your child. For their mental and emotional state, and let them find their own voice, and know doctors who understand Usher syndrome, and make sure that your child has accommodations such as interpreters for doctor's appointments. Your child has accommodations at school. Help your child feel comfortable having Usher syndrome and giving ownership to them. The same thing with educators. Be an advocate for your students who have ushers. Allow them ownership and fight for their rights to figure out what accommodations they need. Constantly monitor their needs as well. Be aware of what's happening with their peers. Peer involvement can impact your child's emotional state. Support them and use positive language.
Sensitivity. How you get someone's attention who has Usher syndrome. Don't wave in front of their face. I've had people do that, get close to me to wave in my face. Some people I don't see when they're passing by and they wave to me. I don't see them. They think I'm ignoring them, but I don't see them. So a tap on the shoulder would be an appropriate way to get my attention. So a person with Usher syndrome, don't test their field of vision, like waving to the side to see if they see it or not. Sometimes I'm tired, I'm not feeling well, I overlook more things. So don't judge them based on their vision and whether or not they're able to see. I've had people try to test my visual field without me being aware of it. They'll wave towards the side of my face, my peripheral vision, to see if I see them. And that is not respectful. To get my attention, tapping on the shoulder is appropriate. Sometimes deaf people will tap on the table or flash the lights. But for me, that's difficult because I have to scan the room and try to figure out who's trying to get my attention. I prefer to be tapped on the shoulder. Signing space, I mentioned previously, your signing box, that's my preference, to stay in your signing box. Some people prefer to use trailing, where they have their one hand on one arm. Some prefer one hand holding onto the signer's arm. Some prefer tactile ASL. Some prefer pro-tactile. But make sure to change and accommodate people's needs, not make comments like, oh, they can't see me. Or like one doctor looked at my glasses and said, oh, your glasses are so thick, your eyes are bad. I was like, okay, thanks. And someone can ask me, can you see me okay? Do you understand me okay? That's fine, check in with me, but one time is adequate. People will tell you if you need to make further adjustments after checking in with them once. Don't automatically help someone by grabbing them and pulling them. If you see somebody maybe is going to trip, you could tap them. My husband, when he's walking with me, he will tap me on my arm to let me know there's a curb coming up. Or he will tap me to let me know something, but he never takes my arm and pulls it. Introductions are sometimes kind of sticky. Some people want to introduce me by saying, oh, this is Megan and she has Usher syndrome. That is not acceptable to me. It's my identity. It's not there for the taking. But if I do have friends who have Usher syndrome and they introduce me to other friends with Usher syndrome and say she's like us, you know, she has Usher syndrome, that's acceptable. It depends on the situation. It depends on every individual's preference as well. The environment, to make sure the lighting is good. Identity. It is very difficult to know that you have a progressive disease. I struggle to identify as a deaf-blind individual, probably because of the negative stigma I grew up with. I still identify myself as deaf with Usher syndrome. I graduated from a mainstream program with for deaf, hard of hearing students. There was one of the students had a parent with Usher syndrome. Another of my fellow students had Usher syndrome. So it was that common. I was treated differently, as Usher syndrome is something bad. I did have access to language. My family learned sign language for me, but I still felt more disabled being deaf and then having Usher syndrome on top of that. So I saw that word can't often. Oh, you can't see. People want to keep you in a bubble. I suffered with low self-esteem, lack of self-confidence. The way I thought was the more you could see, the better it is. I wish, looking back, that I had some kind of a support group as a teenager. I really didn't get the entire concept of gradually progressive vision loss. If I could have sat down and talked with people who maybe would understand the situation, perhaps I would have. Now, driver's ed, that's another sticky subject. Every teenager dreams of driving and being independent. And I wanted to drive. I still drive to this day. What happened was in high school, I found out that one of the interpreters didn't want to ride with me and another student who had Usher syndrome. So the driver's ed instructor said that we could not take driver's ed. I went to the school board, and then I went to my doctor, and I got a letter from my doctor saying that I could drive. I brought that to the school board, got it approved, brought it to the driver's ed instructor, and was able to take the driver's ed course. But to have people decide what my abilities were and what I can and can't do, I knew as a teenager, maybe I wasn't mature enough to make that decision, but still, that is a conversation, a discussion to be had. Some people with Usher syndrome prefer not to drive. Some, they find different ways of transportation. It's very individualized. But the lesson to learn is not to let other people make decisions for you and make you feel less than. Know my limitations. And I feel that now my gray cloud is not as overwhelming as it used to be. And I know how I want to identify myself as being deaf with Usher syndrome. And yes, I know that I should identify as deafblind. Deafblind has varying degrees. It's important to have no judgment, nobody looking and saying you can't do it, to have that self-confidence, have that self-esteem, to be able to balance out ownership of my identity. So I'm still there trying to, I wish I had this all figured out when I was younger. A while back I went to the Deaf Action Center located in Lafayette, Louisiana. There was deaf, hearing, deafblind, all there in attendance. There was also a Catholic Mass that I went to every Sunday. There was a priest there that could sign. There was Christmas parties and different gatherings, social events. And I was also in a youth group with a lot of teenagers. You can see me sitting there in this picture. We had the opportunity to practice tactile interpreting for deafblind individuals, where they can feel you signing in their hands. So that was a wonderful opportunity. I also got to see how deafblind adults, I went into one deaf man's house, a deafblind individual, and I could see how he designed the home to accommodate his needs. I saw how arts and crafts classes for deafblind individuals was so cool to see how they could make things with their hands that were beautiful. They were really good at creating and making different things. So I did have little bits of exposure with independent living skills in the deafblind community, but I still feel like something was missing. I wish I had a deafblind mentorship program where I could sit down and have conversations with deafblind adults and talk about their challenges and my challenges that we have in common. A deafblind mentorship program is what I wish I had, as well as a support system, a support group, where we could sit down and talk about our challenges and struggles. As I've gotten older, I have been in contact with a lot more people with Usher syndrome outside of the state of Louisiana. There's a lot of people out there like me. And I see a lot of them living independently, confidently. So I feel like now I'm out of that bubble, that little shell that I was in. And I feel like I can do that too. This is my family. My husband is deaf. He does not have Usher syndrome. He has already been tested. He does not carry the gene for Usher's. I have 2 children. Both are CODAs, which is child of deaf adults. Both are hearing. And they do not have Usher syndrome because in order to have Usher syndrome, you have to be profoundly deaf. Both of them are hearing, so they don't have that specific gene. We have not done genetic testing yet. They could be carriers of the gene. So if they were paired with another person who is also a carrier of, higher chance of the children with Usher syndrome. But as a mother, a deaf mother with Usher syndrome, there is some adjustments. My oldest child, if I cannot find him, if I'm looking, I don't see, I will call out to him and he will come to me and tap me and say, "What, mama?" My younger child will just bang on my leg. If I'm doing dishes or something, will just come up and bang on my leg and tell me what he wants. At night, I have an alarm that vibrates the bed if the child is crying, or the lights will flash. I do worry about the future, yes. I worry about, if my children go off to college, if they get married, will I be able to see them as young adults? Will I be able to see their faces? That's something I don't know, something that is in the back of my mind that I worry about. But I have to stay focused on the present. My husband is a big part of my support system. He is a big believer that Usher syndrome doesn't need to stop you and that you can lead a normal life. When I have a bad day, he helps pick me up. He accommodates to my needs. He's very accommodating, very patient, doesn't act like it's an obligation. He sees me as an equal. So I'm very thankful for how my life is going. That constant companion, that gray cloud, is still there. But as an adult, I know that I'm not going to let that take over my life. I believe in research and that something can be found later on.
This is research that is going on in New Orleans. They are researching the national history of ushers currently. It's an ongoing study. They're studying to see how fast it's deteriorating or how slow, and the variety of it. They provide free genetic testing. Usher syndrome meets once a year. And I went to their meeting and it was wonderful having people explain the research on ushers, including the different types. It's very interesting. I met other people with ushers, which was a pretty cool conference to go to and very informative. They do have a website that you can go get more information. The quote, "Seize the day, carpe diem," is one of my favorite mottos. Seize the day. Sometimes goals, passions, dreams seem so far and prevented by Usher syndrome, but don't let Usher syndrome control your life or tell you what to do. Of course, be aware of your limitations, like walking at night and so forth. Be aware of your limitations. This picture is in Tennessee. That's me standing on top of a mountain in the Great Smoky Mountains. We hiked 3 miles. It was a 3-mile round trip hike around the mountain. Now, remember, ushers includes balance issues, and it was very hard hiking that trail. My husband was there every step of the way. Some parts were icy. There was one wooden plank that I had to walk across, and it was tough hiking that. But I faced my goal, and I was able to stand at the top of that mountain. That mountain is Andrew Bald, and I got to be able to see this gorgeous view because I didn't give up. I met my goal. It took about 2 hours to walk the trail and hike, but I checked it off my list. Seize the day. One piece of advice I will say, people with Usher syndrome, don't let stress overtake you or overcome you. It'll cause your vision to deteriorate even more. A person going through a traumatic experience or a big life-changing event, I noticed from personal experience that deterioration does go faster. It's all about how you handle the stress. And try not to let the stress take over. That's what I do. Now, in my doctorate program, I was kind of unsure. I know there'd be a lot of reading involved and using my eyes a lot, but I kept that in the back of my mind that what if I couldn't have that just lingering on. So I just went ahead for the doctorate program, and currently I don't have any regret about it. I took that opportunity and did it. After I get my doctorate, I hope to be part of that progressive movement to provide more language access, accommodate education, and advocate for our deafblind children. I hope to do research in the future. Thank you so much for watching the presentation. I know I went a little bit over time, but thank you all. Do y'all want to go ahead with the questions? We'll go ahead and open the floor up for questions. Now, if anyone wants to sign their question, please type it in the chat that you would like to sign, and I will go ahead and turn on your video. We do have one question from someone who wants to sign. Marissa? Marissa, you can go ahead and turn on your camera. Hello, how are you? Can you see me clearly? Yes. I know in my own life, I have deafblind people as mentors, and it's really been great for me. I am hearing, but I feel like I have learned so much from the deafblind community, and I value that. I just love the discussion and how deafblind children should have mentors from deafblind adults. I'm just curious if you've ever met kids who have ushers, and what was that experience like for you, if that happened? Yes, I did meet several deaf students with ushers, and we shared the same similarities and strategies on getting their attention. I'd have to wait for them to look at me and then sign to them. It was a pretty cool experience because I saw myself through them, reliving that. I mean, we need more like that for those children to meet. It's beautiful. Also, I think your picture when you were a kid was so cute. Well, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time in watching the presentation. Okay, the next question is from Natasha. It seems they want to sign their question. Natasha? Hi. I do have a question. So what is your dream? What are your hopes for the future for the young, deaf, blind, usher students or youth in Louisiana? What do you wish they had that you didn't have? Now, let me think. I do wish, well, I hope for the future, they need a safe space to be able to go to, meeting other people like them, the Deaf Blind Mentor Program, meeting deaf blind adults, just the point to know you're going to be okay and not, have them be uncertain about their identity, having a safe space to be confident and able to control and understand their identity as with ushers. The next question is from Michelle. Say, do you want me to sign it? I'm looking, hang on. Okay, Michelle says, any advice for high school seniors going to college? I wear hearing aids and 10 Degrees Center of Visual offer a benefit, any benefit in their understanding. I think it's important that the college has a plan, that you contact their disability services. Contact their disability services office and see what they have available. Typically at colleges, they hand out pamphlets to the professors on things that they need to do and how to accommodate those needs. I mean, maybe use CART or different, maybe Braille, different assistive technologies. Maybe in the future, Braille, I hope I answered your question. The next question is from Mindy. Let me see if I can find it. So wonderful presentation.
Okay, and now Mindy says, what are your thoughts on students with Usher syndrome and when they should start using an interpreter? Really, it depends on their needs. If you see that they're struggling to see far away, or if they're missing important information, or if they're asking you to repeat things, then try to maybe ask, do you want to sit closer? Would that be better? Like I said, monitor their needs, ask them what they need. Sometimes they might feel too shy or not confident enough to tell you, but you can go to them and say, we'll try this, is that better? Maybe try that approach. Oh, introducing an ASL interpreter to their education, meaning that student has never used an interpreter before? Is that correct, Mindy? Are they learning, you said learning sign language. Is it tactile sign language or pro-tactile sign language or just straight out ASL? Okay, so the vision is pretty good, but the hearing, they're losing their hearing. Yeah, regular ASL, I would recommend starting exposure to the language for anyone with losing their hearing, because they're going to lose accessibility. You want to make sure they have full accessibility when they do lose hearing. So I recommend exposing them to ASL, giving them full access to ASL, yes. I hope I answered your question, Mindy. And Natalie says, and there's another question from Leah. Yes, Leah says, what advice do you have for teachers? The advice that I have is to be patient, to be knowledgeable, ask the students what they need for accessibility. Ask them, can you see me fine? Wear contrast color clothing. communicate with students, asking them what their needs are. You don't want them to be so frustrated and not be afraid to tell you anything. So be aware, be patient. Did I get all the questions? Okay, there's a question about transportation from Michelle. It really depends on your location. The metro area typically is easy for transportation, but for an example, bus transportation services, maybe having a SSP in order to drive you places. It really depends on your location. I hope I answered that question. Marissa? I know, yeah, Marissa says, I know you've discussed this, but if you are a service provider, how would you approach talking about a child's diagnosis? If you could add about what that conversation could look like, add some details, what it might look like. I'm not sure exactly what you mean. What kind of service provider? Hi, sorry. So for an example, I'm a speech and language pathologist, or perhaps a counselor, or a principal at the school, or a teacher. Any of those service providers, if we were providing a service to the child, how could we have a discussion about their particular diagnosis? What would that conversation look like? I know that we've talked about being open-minded, about what they're comfortable with, to use positive language. How would you start that conversation? Really, it depends on what kind of services you're providing. A counselor, it would depend on their social emotional needs and using specific terminology about, losing your hearing or losing your sight. What would you do? Would you adjust to accommodate? With speech, if you have language goals, you might talk to parents or someone at home who can help you to modify. You might be able to have some things that are sensory play, Braille materials. But what's important is using positive language. I hope that answers your question. Marissa said yes. And I'm sorry, I'm just really, this topic is really engaging to me. Say I had a student who was in middle school and I was working with them. And we were discussing their goals for language therapy, working one-on-one. Would it be within my role to say, okay, well, because of your progressive vision loss, we are going to talk about X, Y, and Z? Or is that more for a counselor to address or a doctor to address? Is that within my role? I'm not sure if you can answer that. And Megan said, like Braille materials, maybe you'd have to work with the Braille teacher to talk about maybe Braille materials or developing goals. Might be more for someone else. Providing speech and language services, you would use their accommodations, yes. You would adjust to their needs. I hope that answers your question. And Marissa said, yes, thank you, thank you. Okay, and Natalie says, Megan, we have a question from someone. What is SSP? It's from Michelle. Again, it depends on where you're from, but SSP is a special service provider, a person who would accompany a deafblind individual and maybe drive them to the grocery store or doctor's appointments, and also would let them know what's happening environmentally, explain what they're seeing. They're not an interpreter. An SSP can be a deaf-sighted person that is accompanying someone with Usher syndrome, but it depends on locations. There's some locations that have very limited hours for SSP provider services. There is a limited set amount of time. And Natalie says there is a follow-up question from Michelle. And then something from Mindy. Yes, support service provider. And then Mindy says, does Usher syndrome always lose sight completely? Do we need to be planning for that? It varies among individuals, but I have met people with Usher syndrome that are completely blind later in life. They go completely blind. So I would say I am preparing for that. Mentally, emotionally, and physically, I'm preparing for that, trying to acquire the skills that I need now, reach out to people in the deafblind community. They have deafblind camps. They have different resources, different outreach. So I would say try to become more comfortable with that. And then Michelle asked, how is that usually funded? The special service provider. I'm not quite sure. It could be state funded, it could be federally funded, it depends. And Michelle said that she lives in Louisiana, North Louisiana. I'm not really sure who provides SSP services in North Louisiana. Here in Baton Rouge, we have LAD, Louisiana Association for the Deaf. They provide support service providers for the Baton Rouge area. Lafayette has Affiliated Blind, ABL, but it depends on the location. You would have to reach out to, maybe there is a Deaf Action Center where you live. If you reach out to them, you can perhaps find what they have available. And Natalie said, I would like to add, if you need an SSP, it is funded and supported through LCD, Louisiana Commission for the Deaf. And I see that Natasha made a comment as well on that. Or Natasha has a comment to make.
Hi.
Okay.
I'm gonna voice.
Oh, hold on, Natasha, let me turn on my camera. Okay. Ready.
Okay. I just wanted to say that I work for HKNC. I'm the regional representative for Louisiana. So I see there's a lot of questions, Michelle. I'm gonna share my email in the chat box. Please reach out to me. I love to provide supports, especially since you're in Louisiana. Just wanted to share.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, there is a comment from Marissa. And I see, do you see Natasha's email there in the chat as well? Thank you, Natasha, for sharing that. I know that we're over time, so if there's any further questions, please email them to me, MWIBER, Megan Wimberlin. Okay, the email is in the chat box for everyone to see. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. Thank you. And Natalie says, thank you, Megan. All right, have a good night, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Thank you so much.